Hi, I'm Gretchen Spiker with the City of Topeka.
And I'm India Yarborough with the Greater Topeka Partnership.
The Topeka Talk podcast is back for Season 2 for more meaningful community conversations.
We've got a great lineup in store, and we're excited to have you along for the ride this season. Before getting into the show, we'd like to highlight our first ever Topeka Partnership podcast sponsor. Today's episode is brought to you by Compass Marketing and Advertising Partners. Compass Marketing and Advertising takes their clients through the entire marketing process, from defining a client's business strategy to designing their message in all formats to delivering that message to their target markets. For an agency that partners with your business to navigate new territory and chart paths to success, connect with Compass Marketing and Advertising Partners at weareyourcompass.com. Thank you, Compass, for supporting the Greater Topeka Partnership and Topeka Talk podcast. Now back to the show. And we're back with another Topeka Talk episode focusing on those once-in-a-lifetime ARPA funds we began talking about in our last episode. If you missed the October show, definitely go back and give it a listen. We sat down with the Topeka City Council member who led the city's ARPA selection process, as well as the Director of Child Care Aware of Eastern Kansas, to get the scoop on how the ARPA grants they received will impact childcare in the Topeka area.
That's right, India, and we've got another great episode in the ARPA series on deck for you today. For those who are needing a refresher, we're talking about the American Rescue Plan Act, commonly known as ARPA. We've been diving into how the $10 million in ARPA funding administered through the city of Topeka is being disseminated and the impact ARPA grants are having and will have on our community in areas like childcare, mental health, and housing.
And that just so happens to be the perfect segue to our introduction of today's guest. Joining us in the studio is Chris Palmer, Executive Director of Cornerstone of Topeka. Cornerstone has been serving the Topeka community since 1987. It began with a transitional housing program designed to help individuals and families experiencing homelessness get back on their feet, and it's grown to include permanent affordable housing. With a background in commercial real estate and property management, Chris has been at the helm of Cornerstone since 2013. He manages all day-to-day activities of Cornerstone and is responsible for developing both new construction and rehabilitation housing projects for the organization. And part of the reason we wanted to have him on today is because of how his work and the work of Cornerstone overlaps with our conversation about ARPA funds.
So without further ado, Chris, welcome and thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Gretchen. Thank you, India. Happy to be here. Yes, it's we're always developing. We always have the next project in mind, and we were really excited. And I'm going to say excited versus elated, or can't think of the proper word for when it's, oh my gosh, the bids are what? But we had some projects in the works, and then, COVID changed everything.
Yeah.
And we used to build houses for about $110 a square foot, then maybe it was $120 a square foot, and all of a sudden post-COVID, and first it was the supply chain, and then it was labor shortages, but I think our last bids were like $160 a square foot. So when you ask for funds and you go either fundraise or get grants and have a private loan, when those are all settled, it was, oh, there's a gap. There's a gap here. And, and you've heard, maybe have heard gap funding. ARPA, through this city, that $10 million opportunity, made 3 of our projects that were in the works possible. I'm not saying that they would never have happened, but they certainly wouldn't have happened now.
Right.
And maybe would have backed off on 2 of them or 1 of them. That supplemental ARPA funding made these 3 projects for us possible. And I can't wait to tell you more about it.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
We're excited to hear more.
I think we're going to dive into that here in a couple questions. But first, while we were looking into Cornerstone and trying to understand all that your organization caters to, knowing both homeless individuals and those who are part of the labor force but fall below the poverty line. In the Did You Know section of your website, it says about a third of your 179 households are single parents with kids. Tell us a bit more about Cornerstone and the populations you serve. What types of people come to you all for help?
Well, the easy answer is, we have about 180 housing units, and that's everything from single-family homes. We have a lot of duplexes, and then a few fourplexes. But of those 179, I think we have right now, but by the end of 2024, that'll be like 215.
Wow.
We have 14, I think right now, soon to be 16 units that are for our transitional housing program. Those serve the recently homeless. It's a 6-month program, and you need to be referred from an agency. And we do have a waiting list. That is a very small part of our 179 units. The rest of them, I don't want to say it like we're boring, but we're a private landlord. We're a private landlord. We just happen to get some federal money when we build new or do massive rehabs to homes. And because of that, we serve populations that are either 80, 50, or 30% of the area median income. So although this may have a negative connotation, the working poor, the people that serve your food, the people that work in the hospitals, the people that, in the service industry, young families, we would, if you stay with us, if you live with us, the rules are the same as any other private landlord, but you are going to pay fair market rent. Now, it's fair market low income rent. People say FMR. You might hear FMR, fair market rent. It's actually a number established by HUD for the area. So let's just say if you are in East Topeka or Southeast Topeka or Central Topeka, and around you, people might be renting for $900 a month for a 3-bedroom house. You could rent with us for maybe $550.
Mm-hmm.
Then, obviously you pay your own utilities. But we've had tenants that have been with us, for years. Again, as long as you want to stay, you can stay as long as you're paying your rent. One thing that's interesting, even in our homeless program, our transitional housing program, everyone must have income.
Okay.
Everyone must have income. So, and then also 80% of our tenants receive no rent subsidy. So they're paying 100% on their own. That other 20% might be, they have a VA VASH, so they're a veteran, but the VASH program is like Section 8 for veterans. Or the city runs a wonderful program called Shelter Plus Care. Shelter Plus Care is like Section 8 for folks with severe persistent mental illness or AIDS. And then obviously there's Section 8. In that, we work just like any other private landlord. Someone has a Section 8 voucher, and they go out to shop and find a landlord that will take it. And let's say on like that $550 a month rent, they have a stipulation that no more than a third, let's say, of their income goes toward rent. So based on their income, then that voucher would pay the rest. So maybe they pay $300, and the rest of it is paid by like the housing authority.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't want to get too far into the weeds. But that's again, we serve people. It's they need to have income. That's either through working, or maybe they have Social Security or Social Security disability.
It sounds like you serve a large population, which is really
Mainly
great to
families.
Understand and dive into. And I think it's great that you mentioned also some of the partnerships that you all are a part of, and
right,
being able to accept so many folks.
Yeah. And clearly such an important service that Cornerstone does offer in the Topeka area when it comes to housing. I know in just a minute we're going to dive into the 3 important Cornerstone projects being made possible by ARPA grants that you mentioned a second ago, that we mentioned at the top. But right before we get into that, what can you tell us kind of about the state of transitional and affordable housing in the Topeka area? I mean, what does that landscape look like, just based on the work you do?
Sure. One thing, we don't have to spend a lot of money on marketing to get folks to move in. We usually have, I think at the end of the year, about a 95 to 96% occupancy rate for the year, and most landlords would kill for that. But we don't have a lack of people that need affordable housing. Therefore, they find us.
Yeah.
They find us because they know someone who's already a tenant, or, knock on wood, hopefully our good reputation. I won't know. I don't think anybody will know when we've maxed out our affordable housing in Topeka. I know that depending on where you lived in the country, if you lived on the East Coast or the West Coast, you'd say, oh my gosh, everything's affordable. Well, compared to that, yeah. But, you're also going to make a lot less here. And rents are very high. Construction, I know that I was heard someone from visit Topeka not too long ago, and they said that the apartments that are being built 29th and Fallon, which are now completed, I think, that was the first new construction apartment complex in Topeka in more than 20 years. Wow. And I remember I thought, well, there's the ones right above Walmart, and then I thought about it and someone said, yeah, that was 22 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't seem like it. I still think of them as new. But that's just an example. There hasn't been a lot of construction.
And that's something we've really seen in the housing market at large, just that lack of inventory, right? Being right. Very much a seller's market in some right. ways. So
right.
That really, I think, reflects some broader trends.
Yeah. So it's, yes, affordable housing. I mean, it all depends on who you are. If you make $20,000 a year and have a family of 4, then affordable housing is super important. If you make $150,000 a year and you have 3 children and you want to buy a house on the west side or so, it's not affordable for you either.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
a lot about perspective.
It's all perspective, but right now it is unaffordable, and people can sit back and think, well, gosh, look at how much my house is worth. Maybe we should sell it. Yeah, but you have to buy a house.
And I think it's a lot about inventory for the area, right?
Yes,
what I picked up on earlier was you said for transitional housing, the program that serves those who have recently become homeless, that there's a long waiting list for that. And the city certainly sees that for some of our other shelter plus care participants, et cetera. And so I think that it's all relative depending on the category.
I think housing is, and I was really happy. The city, again, I'm going to say it was last year, but it wasn't. It was probably 3 years ago. had the first, they did the first housing study in more than 30 years for the city. And it wasn't just a low-income housing study. It was a housing study. It went through all markets, all neighborhoods, and that is really good data. It helps folks like me, and I know like Janice Watkins at Habitat for Humanity, that new data helps us prove to grantors that, the need for affordable housing. Well, that's just part of what that housing study was for. That housing study is good data for city leaders when they're talking about development and private developers, and maybe not subsidizing private developers, but maybe TIF financing or things like that.
Right. I do remember a little bit about that housing study in the last several years. So, yeah.
And Chris, now looking at those 3 projects we mentioned earlier, Cornerstone is receiving a little more than $515,000 in ARPA grants across those 3 projects.
Correct.
One involves construction of a transitional housing duplex, which sounds like will be very much needed. Another entails construction of an affordable housing duplex. And the final project focuses on construction of 3 single-family affordable homes. So really across the board there.
Right.
What can you tell us about these projects? Take us through the details and why they're important.
Excellent. First, I'll start with the one that's almost completed, and that's the transitional duplex. If anyone wants to drive by, it is at 506 Southwest Fillmore. We own most of the 500 block of Fillmore, and that is where most of our transitional housing is. If you drive by there quickly, you would think, well, these are just houses. Well, they were houses. A lot of them were houses built, almost 100 years ago that were converted even before we got them into a duplex or a fourplex. We bought a house to tear it down several years ago at 506 Fillmore, and now this new construction is happening. It's up. If you were to drive by right now, it looks done. There's not appliances yet. There's still a little bit of plumbing work to do, but we hope to have a ribbon cutting for the Cooner house and I'm calling it the Cooner House because Mike Cooner was a long-term board member of ours and board president. While he was president, diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, and he passed away. So to honor him, it is called the Cooner House.
Very nice.
And we are very excited about it. It is the first new construction project we've ever done that targets just our transitional housing program.
Wow.
Because most, when we get grants from, money comes from HUD, it goes to the city or the state, and it comes to us in the form of a grant when we apply for it. And everyone else has a project too, and this is ours. HUD does not fund, they need permanent leases. They do not fund transitional housing. So our transitional housing program isn't really government funded. ARPA dollars were different. ARPA dollars didn't have that restriction. And so we had private fundraising about $100,000 or so, plus the ARPA money together. We're able to do that.
So it sounds like those ARPA funds really pushed that over the finish line.
Yes.
Awesome.
It did.
Yeah.
It did. We wouldn't have been able to do it. Again, wouldn't have been able to do it when we did it.
Right.
It might be 3 or 4 years from now, and after a capital campaign or something, it would have worked. But no, it made it possible. I remember it was odd when I filling out the application, and I will say I want to give thanks to the 3 members of the council that were on the committee. I think it was Councilman Duncan, my councilwoman, Cynthia, not Cynthia, that's her mother.
Sylvia?
Nager, Councilwoman Hannah. Sorry,
Right.
gosh, but yeah, her mother Cynthia now has a shout out, and
Councilman Valdivia.
Councilman Valdivia.
Yep.
Those they did yeoman's work on that committee. They vetted every project, and we were fortunate to do that. Well, on that application, part of it was how many people how many people will be served. So it's easy if you're filling it out and it's going to be, we want money so we can give food baskets, or we're going to provide something, rent assistance. Well, the hard part is, okay, 2
people.
Okay, but we want this much money. It's what? Well, because it was, when you think about it, it's,
right?
and I think I said 4. So it was,
okay.
because it was, if it's a 6-month program, there's 2 units, so that's 4 families.
Gotcha.
But that's the first year.
Mm-hmm.
I just told you that a lot of the houses that we have, we've rehabbed them and things, but they were built 100 years ago. This will be serving families,
For years.
God willing, long after I'm gone.
Yeah.
And it's new construction. It's not something that you have to hold together, or it was a kind of a rundown house that you made up. This is brand new construction. This will help people for decades.
Right. And then with the other 2 projects,
Right.
are those new builds as well?
Those are, all of our project new construction. That's just for our affordable housing program, which is our general. The other, I'll talk to the second program, is on southeast Alkire, and people aren't going to know where that is. It's just east of 6th and Golden. That's Alkire.
Okay.
I always like to say it's where the corner of 6th and 10th. It's funny in Topeka that you can say that, but near there, and it was all wooded. I don't think it's ever been developed. And we had some city funds from the SORT program, the SORT grant program, that combined with ARPA is allowing us to build a duplex there. And I will tell you, since then, we found some other money. We're building 2 duplexes there. And the ground has been cleared. It was like a forest. That has been cleared. They're leveling the ground now. So construction will start, probably within a week or 2. That won't be done by the end of the year, but it will be mostly done. You'll probably see some framing go up the next month. So that's going strong. And then the other is, it started with a 3-home project. We did lose a large funding source. That right now is only going to be 1 3-bedroom house.
Okay.
But the ARPA funds made that possible with some city home funds, which the city is the administrator, but it's actually federal funding.
Well, and I think what you're talking about is kind of interesting because it kind of points to how nonprofits are trying to pull funding from all these different areas and sources, right, to make their operations possible. Well, so that's an interesting.
You have to, I still remember years ago there was, and if you want to make you want to be a success in business, you need to write a really thin book that tells people how to be successful in business. And there was one, and it was, big letters, small book. It was called Who Moved My Cheese? And it was basically that, the mouse needs to always have their tennis shoes, their sneakers, because as long as you adapt, you will always be successful. But if you complain and everything, is changing too fast, and I like things the way they were, then you're going to fail. And what I just told you, when we planned these and then we didn't have enough funding, it was, oh my gosh. And then ARPA came in. Okay, that's wonderful. And then look, we took what was originally, before ARPA, it was going to be one single family home in on Alkire. Now it's then it became a duplex. And then the city came with us and said, if we found this, could you find some more, take a private loan? Yes. And we built a second one. So that all started with one house, and now it's 2 duplexes. But then on the other side, in Central Park, was going to be 3 homes. That's now 1 home because we lost something. So we lost 2 there, but we gained 2 there.
Right.
You need to always be flexible and adapt.
And it's nice to hear that these are across Topeka, right?
Yeah,
that
right. Different neighborhoods, different neighborhood associations, yes.
And in the Alkire property where you were clearing all of the wood area, maybe that will lead to additional development for you or other partners moving forward. So I think that's exciting.
Right. And I think it's important to point out that these are all 3 new construction, opportunities. And like you said, the first new construction transitional housing that Cornerstone will be able to create, and ARPA funding's really pushed this over the line. So that's incredible.
And if I have time, I just told you, didn't want to tease it and then not finish it. But we have, about 180 units now, and we're going to have like 206 or something by the end of next year. We are building, it's near the old Jostens. It's basically the southwest corner of 37th and Adams. We're partnering, that's a low-income tax credit project. And if you had, invite me back and I'll do another podcast with you on LITEX, so low-income tax credit projects. And those are usually much bigger. That's 24 senior housing units. And we partner with Excel Development out of Nebraska. And then Shirley Construction locally is doing the construction. That took a long time to put together. We will not own that project, but we are the general partner because we're the nonprofit. And then after 15 years, we can own it, but we will manage it. We have a similar project like that has 20 units near 13th in California, Cornerstone Village. Anyway, it hurts my heart a little bit. This is senior housing, but the federal government defines senior housing as 55 and older. And I just turned 55 in June. So it just doesn't seem like it makes sense. But what we're hoping, and there's a spokesperson from the Senator Marshall's office, used to run John Mugler spoke at the groundbreaking. And one thing he said, and I think is true, that's going to be 24 units, 2 bedrooms, senior housing. The hope is these are people that are downsizing, selling their home, maybe, and moving into affordable housing in their retirement that is accessible because of their fixed income. But maybe that house they've been hanging on to now goes back in.
Kind of points to that cycle of housing market.
So the housing market. So maybe they'll turn some homeowners into renters.
And you really teased my next question, because I was going to ask about how these new builds and new projects kind of contribute to the housing stock Cornerstone is responsible for, and even the stock more broadly in Topeka when it comes to affordable homes. So it sounds like these projects will push you over the 200 mark then, is it right? For units in Topeka that Cornerstone manages?
And we had 150 10 years ago almost 11 years ago when I started. So we've sold a few that just didn't fit anymore. And we used the funds from those to rehab other houses or, buy other opportunities if we own homes around them. So we do what we do. We try to do it well. We focus on just the housing portion. But I'm glad that the city of Topeka is such a good partner. I mean, look at this. You guys, the city of Topeka and the chamber the Greater Topeka Partnership.
The chambers of
Exactly. I mean, but you two have this podcast together. You two are working together.
Yeah.
Not every community, a lot of times the business community and government, local government, are at odds.
Right.
And I like the partnership. That's one of our partnerships. So, I don't want to say kumbaya, but, if we each do our part,
serves a better Topeka. Yeah.
Partnerships are going to move us forward.
Helping me finish that.
Of course. And Chris, we know that homelessness and housing, of course, more broadly have been top of mind for Topekans lately. These issues are being addressed in different ways by multiple organizations and those partnerships, as you mentioned, as well as businesses. They're also included in some of our latest community strategies. And looking ahead for a moment, what is your hope for these issues, knowing that you serve in your transitional housing programs, those who are coming out of being homeless? What is your hope for these issues 5-10 years from now?
Well, you're not going to end homelessness. I think that a couple of things have happened. Recently, there's been a lot of talk about the unsheltered homeless, and I will differentiate between the homeless and the unsheltered homeless, because the people at the rescue mission, the people at the Center for Safety and Empowerment, if you're bunking up with relatives or friends, you might not have your own home, but you are sheltered. The unsheltered homeless is its own animal. And I know that people have talked about low barrier shelters and things like that.
But maybe related to Cornerstone, is it more
good, because I don't want to solve the whole problem myself.
Right? Is it? And apologies if I didn't phrase that well. Yeah. For your part, is it more transitional housing 5 to 10 years from now? Like, what is kind of your individual strategy?
Thank you.
Kind of that long-term vision.
Good. That makes it a little easier to try to take a bite of.
You to solve world peace or
exactly. For us, as we've grown, I said we've about 150 units. We're going to soon have 206 or so. What we have liked to do is we try to keep the same percentage of our housing focused toward the homeless. So that is our mission. That's what we do. But I will say to you two and anyone listening, the millions of listeners I'm sure follow this podcast.
It's a big audience.
That's right. That's right. Brought to you. Now I lost my train of thought trying to be funny.
No worries.
It's
to the best.
Right. I honestly.
It's okay. You were talking about how you're a certain percentage.
Oh, okay. So our certain percent. It is a money loser. We lose money on our transitional housing program.
Okay.
By design, we try to be as efficient as possible, but those 14 to 16 units out of our 170, we have more evictions. I don't mean we have more evictions per capita. I mean, we have more evictions in those than we do the rest of our stock combined. More damages, more, people leaving and not paying. It used to really break me up. And when I first started, I like to say we have big hearts, but we hopefully have pretty good sized brains too. We want to help people, but sometimes, and this is a Barry Feaker quote. I heard it from someone else, but I attribute it to Barry, because I thought, my gosh, I mean, if we've evicted this person, they've been evicted from Cornerstone Transitional. Where are they going to go? What are they going to do? And it used to keep me up at night. And Barry's line was, they're not bad people. They're just not at that point on their journey yet. And it really helped me understand, we give opportunities. We help people that are ready to make that. And that's why you need to be working with a case manager. You need to be referred from an agency. We're that next step, but you're already on the road to trying to get there. We can't afford to have too many more. I could tell you here, we have a bad homeless situation now. So we're going to convert 20% of our affordable housing to transitional. Well, we pay utilities. It's a drastically reduced rent, even from our lower rents. And it's a 6-month program. And I'd say there's, maybe 40% don't succeed. So that costs us a lot of money. We have a small fundraiser a year, but, we have a budget of about $1 million, and we fundraise about, a net 30 or 35,000. So it's not a real big part of what we do, but that helps offset the cost of operating. So as we continue to grow and provide more affordable housing for, like I said before, like the working poor, although that's a horrible name, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
As we grow
and you're employed, but still below.
Yes,
Really.
yeah. So as we grow, as long as we keep that, our board is focused and has tasked us with, as long as we are focused on keeping that same percentage, we can function and succeed and stay in the black. But when we had, 12 and we're soon to have 16, and then we might convert 4 more. So as we grow, we will try to always keep that percentage. So that's what we can do.
Perspective. It's helpful to understand the model that works for you all. And I think as you were talking about, some of those who succeed in this environment and those who don't, it all goes back to housing is that one piece. And you guys are really good at your one piece, and you have great partners. Yeah. But it all is so interconnected and related. And going back to our earlier conversation that spoke to childcare too, that's such a big issue that all intersects with this, working wages and being able to afford rent and then being able to afford childcare.
It's not my area, but I can understand both situations for childcare. We need to pay a living wage to those people that are taking care of children. We don't pay a living wage. You need to pay them more money. Other argument. Childcare is too expensive. We need to have childcare that everyone can afford.
Yeah.
Those two can't touch. I mean, without something else happening, that's just not, good, high quality childcare is expensive, and sometimes so expensive. How can you afford it for, so.
Well, it points to the complexities of these issues we're talking about, and to the fact that, even a few steps forward is still progress,
Yeah.
So even if it happens slow and over time, progress is progress. And I think that's important to kind of keep that perspective too, as we work through these issues, we try to address these different challenges our community is facing. So,
well, thank you for publicizing it.
Absolutely. Well, and Chris, as we close out our conversation today, is there anything else you want listeners to know? Anything we haven't touched on that you really want to get out there?
Well, gosh,
we touched on a lot. So.
I know we have covered a lot. I will say I have a fantastic staff. They're professionals in their area. I actually. And I'm gonna go ahead and do this. He'll be really embarrassed, but everyone's good. Everyone's replaceable. Everyone's indispensable, but everyone's replaceable. As a supervisor, as a boss, you try to let people know, you're amazing, you're wonderful, but don't get too big of a head, because we can always find someone who looks just like you. But of course, right now you can't, because no one can hire anybody. But I will openly say this, and I'm going to say it on this podcast. I have one person who is probably irreplaceable. And that's Jerry Yoder, and Jerry Yoder is our facilities manager. Jerry views this as his mission in life, and he's been here longer than I've been here. Jerry has a bachelor's degree in architecture and a master's in city planning, and he is our facilities guy. He will draw the plans for our duplexes, because you can draw, he doesn't have an architectural stamp, but he can draw the plans. That's wonderful. He then on-site supervises when we have contractors, and he knows things. But he also unclogs toilets and fixes light switches, and
talk about range.
Yeah,
exactly. He's got range. That is someone that, of course, he's replaceable, but he's replaceable with 3 people for a lot more money. So when I ever get to the point where I stay up at night thinking, what if something happened to Jerry? Then I know that things must be okay, because I've gotten to that part of anxiety where you're starting to worry about things that are just silly. So everyone's important. Everyone does a fantastic job at Cornerstone. We all do well. But I would put myself in this category. I'm replaceable. Everyone's replaceable, not Jerry. Mm-hmm. So we're lucky.
Well, thank you, Chris, so much. And Jerry, thank you to you. Your special shout out, and all of your other teammates and team members at Cornerstone for the important work you do. We really appreciate your time and for coming on the podcast today.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. We hope you'll join us next time.
You can catch new episodes of Topeka Talk Community Conversations the first week of each month.